feel such an immense level of satisfaction from the fact that I'm actually filming from the angle that I used to, except that it's nighttime and I have relatively decent light. So let me be excited about the fact that there's more than one light illuminating this room. So I realized that I never really finished my stories of my high school experience. I did my freshman year memories and then I stopped. So I am here to resume that note with my sophomore year. My sophomore year took place between the years 2009 and 2010, and the first class that I have a memory of that also happened to be the first time that I ever said that I really enjoyed a social studies class was called Civics and Economics, and this class really helped me think about a few things. I remember when we were starting the law section of civics, and oh my gosh, that had me so convinced that I was going to go and become a lawyer or a judge, but then I said, realistically, no. I'm gonna go over some of my favorite memories from back then. One time we were coming back from a fire drill and my teacher stood outside the door of his classroom. Apparently there were some boys or something who were trying to skip, and then my teacher just shouts at them, "Go to class." And then the guys were replying, muttering something. I didn't hear what it was. But then my teacher goes, "You got something to say? Come over here and say it on my face." He was so serious when he came in to the classroom. Like, he had such a angry face to him. I wanted to ask him something. It wasn't even related to the incident. It was something, maybe a question about homework or a test, just a generic school question. I didn't dare to, from how angry he looked. To put the cherry on top, when he walked to his desk, he said to himself, "Them little punks." That was just hysterical for me. Another day, some boy was running down the hall. My teacher shouted at him saying, "Don't run." And then he kept running. My teacher shouts at him again saying, "You hear me, boy?" And then after that, anytime I would say something to my teacher and he didn't hear me, I would go like, "You hear me, boy?" And then eventually he started saying, "You hear me, girl?" Because I was picking on him so much since he said that. It was just a fun experience. He was a crazy guy, but he was one of my favorite folks back in the day. This class was pretty awesome. As much as I just hated social studies, there's always something that I have yet to learn, and this class did that for me. For the most part, I became aware of things that I normally didn't think about, and I also got to understand a little bit of the business world, how their decisions affect me as a citizen. So it was a pretty interesting class nonetheless. Then I took geometry. Oh my god, it was a required class. My classmates, it was a girl and then it was a boy. They kept saying the name of a teacher in a funny way, and this teacher's last name is Nikom. So they had this habit of just saying Nikom. They had their own funny signature way of saying yes. These people are crazy. And this happened every day, man. And I used to hate it when it would happen during class because since it was a math class, I was struggling at it. So the fact that they were being silly meant that it was making my learning experience a little tougher than it needed to be. But at the end, I had a pretty good teacher, so I wasn't really worried. But one day the teacher called them out. He was like, "And you guys keep making fun of Miss Nikom's name." During this time I had my cat whose name was Nico, so when I would go home I would call him Nico, and it was totally inspired by these kids. Nico. And yeah, this is the light that sometimes has a seizure, so if you see some flickering in your screen, it is not you, it is this light. My teacher's name started with J's, like his first name and last name started with J's, and then he was doing something And while he was trying to work on solving a problem, he drew a plane. On its tail, he wrote the initials of his name, JJ. So this boy, who I said earlier would say his funny stuff, decided to say that that stood for jumping and then the last name of my teacher. I'm not gonna mention any names, but I thought it was hilarious. But it cracked me near death at the time. So let's pretend his last name was Johnson, Jumping Johnson. And I remember that this took place in the trigonometry unit. Ugh. My teacher was a guy who had this really thick southern accent, so sometimes I couldn't understand him, or let alone his sayings. It's one of those accents that cannot be mistaken for anything else. I thought it was sweet accent. I found it to be funny, but I remember him saying that the first day of school is just blah 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 day. One time, because of his accent, maybe people have made him self-aware of it, and he said, "Just because I sound funny doesn't mean that I'm stupid." He would have been a great actor. I just get that feeling from him. And then another thing that he would say is that, say if I would ask him a question like, so is the right way to do this is by doing this and that, he would go like, yes girl, you're cooking with gas right over there. So I thought it was just hysterical. Those were good times. Even though I wasn't feeling my greatest during that time, I had good memories to make. And then my favorite memory from this class definitely has to come from this girl who was absolutely crazy. She would smoke. She was into weird things, but she would be this person who would literally sleep in class, and she would make it obvious that she was sleeping because she would sit at the very front right next to me. I would opt for sitting at the front because I was wearing glasses and my vision was just getting worse. So we're at the very front. You're the first people that the teacher sees, and then she would snore sometimes. She never did any work. I don't even know how she passed. But anyways, one day my teacher was talking about how he had seen rats in his room before. And then that girl, upon hearing him say that, climbed on her desk, placed her feet on the seat. She sat, placed like her butt on that table part of the desk, and then my teacher just paused and he was like, why are you sitting like that? And then this girl is one of those folks who have round eyes, so therefore they can open them really wide. And then she was like, why are there rats in your classroom? And then I couldn't control myself. I was giggling so much. Then my teacher goes, you're not supposed to be sitting on the desk like that. And then the girl goes, you're not supposed to be having rats in your classroom. She was that kind of person who would give you that kind of smart response and attitude, so that made it 10,000 times more funny for me. And at the same time, as funny as I thought that was back when it was happening, it's not the teacher's fault that there are rats in his classroom sometimes. That building was just old, like probably goes back to the 50s if I remember right, so there's only so much you can do. And anyways, although I struggled with this class, I ended up passing that final exam, state exam. But at the same time, I have no doubt in my mind that if I passed it, it was thanks to the curve. I forget how the curve works. I don't know how to explain it, but if you guys haven't heard of it, it pretty much means that something about the average that kids make, and it helps bump points to your test score in some way. Maybe the average tends to fail the exam, but in order to not look too bad, they do something with their numbers to where that helps you. My score came back saying that I passed with an 85-ish, and I was so worried because I was sure that I was going to fail this class or this final test. But then I told myself, you know what? I passed because of the curve. There's no doubt about it. So maybe I made a 70 something in it, because I remember that test for me was hard. Like, it's one of those tests that even if you try to insert the answer into what you're solving for, it wouldn't guarantee that you would get the response. So that made me even more anxious as I took the test. But I mean, I was ready to accept it. I had told mom beforehand, I'm like, Mom, I feel like this semester I haven't been learning at the rate that I'm supposed to. I feel really nervous about this test. So if anything happens, I want you to know that I was really trying. But anyways, at the end of the day, I passed and I'm just happy for that. But I remember being really anxious and worried during this time. Alright, guys, I have a few more notes of this semester, but I've already taken a little too long rambling about my previous classes, so I'm gonna stop it right here and I will create a part 2. Thanks so much for tuning in. What was your sophomore year like? Alright, I'll see you soon.